Crime Cafe, your podcasting source of great crime, suspense, and thriller writing. I'm your host, Debbi Mack. Before I bring on my guest, I'll just remind you that the Crime Cafe has 2 ebooks for sale, the 9-book box set and the short story anthology. You can find the buy links for both on my website, debbimack.com, under the Crime Cafe link. You can also get a free copy of either book if you become a Patreon supporter. You'll get that and much more if you support the podcast on Patreon, along with our eternal gratitude for doing so. But first, let me put in a good word for Blueberry Podcasting. I'm a Blueberry affiliate, but that's not the only reason I'm telling you this. I've been using Blueberry Podcasting as my hosting service for my podcast for years, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made. They give great customer service. You're in complete control of your own podcast. You can run it from your own website, and it just takes a lot of the work out of podcasting for me. I find for that reason that it's a company that I can get behind 100% and say, you should try this. Try Blueberry. It doesn't require a long-term contract, and it's just a great company, period. And it also has free technical support by email, video, and phone. So you can get a human being there. Isn't that nice? Hi, everyone. My guest today writes fiction in the suspense and thriller genres. Most of her works involve science or medicine. She has a PhD in biochemistry and an MD, and she practiced pathology for more than 20 years. Her books include the Erica Rosen trilogy, Ties That Kill, and her latest novel, The Organ Broker. She's also published several short stories. It's my pleasure to introduce my guest, Deven Greene. Hi, Deven. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you're here today. So very glad that you're on the show. You live in Northern California, yes?
That's correct. Yeah.
What part? Because I used to live in Petaluma.
Oh, okay. Well, you may have heard of Orinda, which is a tiny town, but it's near Walnut Creek and Berkeley.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
remember. That's the Napa Valley, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I'll be darned. Beautiful country up there.
Yeah, no, I like it here. So.
Yeah. So with a background like yours, I can certainly see how you got inspired to write medical thrillers or science thrillers. When you started writing fiction, did you find you had to kind of adjust your writing to be a bit less formal and more engaging, so to speak?
Well, it's quite different than writing pathology reports. I'll
For
say
sure.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say that I've read enough fiction, especially in my genre, to be able to adapt pretty easily. You know, and interestingly, when I first started out, I had a resident working under me, and she wrote a pathology report, and she did a description of everything, but she didn't say what it was, and it was like she was waiting, trying to build up suspense. I said, no, this is not, this is a pathology report. You have to say what it is, So,
Yeah, just say it.
yeah, but it's different in what I'm doing now.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do work in technical terms though, and what's your method for taking complex scientific subjects and making them understandable to the average reader?
That's a good question. So I really like to put what I call sciencey things in my writing. That's one thing I really enjoy doing, and hopefully people will learn things. So I'll write something, and then I'll go through it several times to simplify it, and then I give it to other people to read who are not in the medical or scientific field and get feedback. And a great one is my little brother, who didn't know the difference between a gallbladder and a kidneys, I found out. So,
Oh my goodness.
so he's a good one. If he can understand it, most people can. So I wind up, simplifying. I try to keep it still accurate. Okay. Some people may find it too much. I don't know. they can skip over those parts, but that's not the main substance of my books. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
You'd rather sprinkle it in than overwhelm with detail.
yes, that's my attempt. That's
Yes.
my attempt.
I think that's generally the way people approach it. I know that when it comes to legal terminology, I tend to I used to be very, what would you call it? Literal in the way I would present something or
Oh,
very explanatory. It's
uh-huh.
like, no, 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 Debbie, cut back, make it less explanatory, make it more,
Yeah.
make it more like fiction. Duh.
Right. It's not a report. It's not yeah,
Exactly,
a
yeah.
brief.
So what is your latest book about?
My latest book, The Organ Broker, and I happen to have a copy here.
Nice cover.
Trying to get it in focus is
It's a
about,
little out of focus there.
well, I'm not being very successful here. There we go.
I can
It's a
catch the
small
title every
window
now
where I
and
can,
then.
anyway, it's about, as one person thought it was about someone who sells like piano type organs to churches, and it's not that.
Hmm.
I think most people would get that. So basically, the book starts with a political rally, and there's a very charismatic speaker, and they're in front of a big building, and people are holding signs that say "Stop," STOP, and they eventually bring somebody. The police bring somebody and lead him wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles, bring him into the building. And at the end, you realize that he's going to be executed. And the name of the organization is Stop Transplant of Organs from Prisoners, because they're now executing people and taking their organs to transplant. So that's basically what it's about. And it's about a couple with a very charismatic husband, but he's a jerk, and the wife, who's kind of the brains behind the operation, and she really wants to see it succeed. And there's this dark character called Broker Al, who actually sells the organs. You learn at some point, and things don't go as they should. So that's basically the story. Uh,
Wow. And what inspired you to write about this particular subject?
um, Good question. I kind of get my thoughts out of thin air. I did read a book a while back, which was interesting, about a man who accompanied his brother who needed a kidney to China, and they used prisoners, as you may or may not know, and it has been brought up in other countries. But it was an interesting read, and I just remembered one one part of the book I couldn't believe, where they're actually going to get this kidney, and he's kind of saying, well, who is this guy? And he's talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, this man is very bad. He's so bad I would kill him myself. You
Oh
know?
my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. But anyway, it is practiced kind of hush hush in China and
Huh.
probably other countries.
Fascinating. Very
So
interesting.
it's a what if? What if we did that here? It has been
Exactly.
talked about. Has been talked about.
That
So
is very interesting. Um, you also are offering to give away a copy of that book as well as the Erica Rosen trilogy, is it?
yeah, I have this called Erica Rosen MD trilogy, and there's 3 books in that one. It's older, so it's about a pediatrician who has, you know 3 events, I'll say, because each one, the first one, which is called Unnatural, is about genetic engineering, uh, a- and the second one, Unwitting, is about autism, and the third one, which is called Unforeseen, has to do with pharmaceutical industry. So they're all
Mm.
different, but they follow a story arc with Erica and her best friend Daisy. She's a San Francisco pediatrician, but she does wind up going different places in the books.
Are your books generally set in the same area, location?
No, actually, I move around. my story, Ties That Kill, which I wrote in between, takes place in Idaho. And actually, after I wrote that, there were the 4 killings in Idaho.
Ooh.
You hear, it's these 4 university students were murdered.
Wow.
It's been on the news a lot. And then the organ broker takes place mostly in Texas, which
Hmm.
is kind of a big capital punishment state. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
it
That's
seemed
right.
appropriate.
That seems appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. How much research do you do before and while you write your books?
Oh, I do quite a bit. A lot of the main subjects I write about, I know a fair amount about, but often I have to do more research in that. But there's also a lot of ancillary things that come up, that I kind of don't know anything about, and I really enjoy learning about these things. Uh, they may not be the main subject of the book, but I like to keep things interesting and just introduce things, and maybe about a place, a thing, a technique, an item. I had to learn some cell phone technology, for instance, for one of
Mm.
my books. Learned Bitcoin technology for another of my books. Just a number of random things.
I hear
So,
that more and more about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, people learning about this stuff, and I'm always amazed. It's like, I can barely wrap my mind around it.
well, I'm not saying I would invest in it, but
Yeah, really.
but I
Honestly.
know something about it.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
So
there's something I wanted to ask you, and now it's just completely slipped my mind, but I will just continue on.
okay, okay.
What kind of writing schedule do you keep?
Well, I've actually developed a writing schedule.
That's good.
When I first started to write, I was still working, and then it was just whenever. I couldn't really easily fit it in, but I did most of my writing more late at night on the weekends, and sometimes I would take vacation and just stay home and write. I wouldn't go anyplace. But now I'm retired, and it took me a while. Um, I would get kind of obsessed and want to just keep writing. And I've realized that that's actually not a good thing. So now what I do is, when I'm writing, when I'm doing the rough draft, what I call the rough draft, I write 1,100 words a day. I get up, I have my coffee, and then I sit down to write, and I write 1,100 words, and then I stop. And it actually gives me time to think about changes I might want to make, instead of just plowing through it really fast. So that works out well. And then, of course, I wind up spending more time editing,
Yes, yes, especially
going
if you're
through.
cranking out 1,000 words a day. That's pretty
Yeah.
good. That's darn good.
So I really do crank it out. I mean, I don't correct much. It's full of misspellings and bad grammar or bad punctuation, and it
But
has to
it's
be.
all stuff you can clean up later.
Yes, yes. So that's what I
Getting
tell
it on the
myself.
page is the hard part.
Yeah.
Then you can clean it up. I don't know what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, as a pathologist, where did you work? What kind of work did you do?
Oh, okay. Well, I was not a forensic pathologist. I was not a medical
Aha.
examiner. And if there's any listening, I'm sorry, but they're weird. All right. So,
You're always depicted that way on television, too. So maybe that's accurate, huh?
well, having been to a number of lectures given by, medical examiners, without going into any details, they like to show gruesome pictures. Okay.
Yes.
And they like to shock an audience even of pathologists. Okay.
Oh, wow.
But I practice, actually, there's a big healthcare institution here called Kaiser Permanente. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard of it, but it covers a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
health. So I worked at one of their labs where I got specimens from all over Northern California, Kaiser, to do special testing on it. I really enjoyed it. And I had to think long and hard about retiring because I really enjoyed my work. But then I thought, actually, the first job I got, the very first job I was called almost in a panic. I had just finished my residency and just finished my boards. And a pathologist had died looking in his microscope, and he just had a heart attack and died.
Mm.
And they needed a
Oh my.
replacement. And so as I got older, I started thinking, I don't want to die at the microscope.
Yeah.
I want to have some fun. I mean, not that work wasn't fun, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
get it.
I thought, so I just kind of picked a date 5 years away and stuck with it. So here I am.
Good thinking.
Yeah.
Um, so are you more of a plotter or a pantser? You sound like a pantser.
Well, I am a plotter. I always start with a plot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I have found that if I write anything detailed, it gets changed. So I
Mm-hmm.
always have a plot. I don't start with characters. I start with definitely with plot, and I know the basic arc, where it's going to start and where it's going to end, and maybe some stops along the way. But yeah, in between, I'm a pantser, you could say. But
Mm-hmm.
I always know who are
Where you're
bad.
headed?
Yeah, where I'm headed. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not really mostly not. My books are not mysteries. People often say you're a mystery writer. I do write some short stories that are mysteries, but they're more, you know what's going on, and you know what the stakes are. You may
Mm-hmm.
not know how it's going to shake out, but anyway, that's what I do. So I definitely have to make a lot of changes along the way, because
Yes.
I can't write that detailed an outline.
Yeah, neither can I. I could never write out every single thing that was going to happen in the book. Otherwise, I would just write the book.
Well, yeah, well, also you get ideas. Ideas
Exactly.
pop into your mind, like you think you were going to do one thing, and then you think this would be better. Or
Mm-hmm.
or you even hear, I mean, actually one thing I've learned is I don't write historical fiction, but in a way that would be easier because the things change now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
sometimes I've written a book and things have changed while I'm writing it,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. Yes.
So
It's a
so it's
very
like,
real problem.
yeah, like COVID.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
biggie. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to stick that in, and when, there's things you have to mention, you started and there was no COVID. Who didn't Nobody heard of it. But, things happen.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
In your guest post, you mentioned several writers that you particularly enjoy or were inspired by. Robin Cook, Michael Crichton, Michael Palmer were three that I remember.
yeah.
Are there any other authors who you enjoy or who inspire you other than those
Actually,
suspects?
I should have put Tess Gerritsen on that list.
Ah,
Okay.
Tess Gerritsen. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, these are MDs that write medical, thriller type books, which I enjoy. And that's not the only thing I enjoy. Okay, but that's what I like to write.
Exactly.
Another book I really enjoyed was The Martian. It's not
Mm,
medical, but it's, what you call sciency, and I really enjoyed that. And I read a lot of nonfiction, and I read a lot of other fiction, and I don't, and some I don't like. I won't mention the ones I don't like.
Do you read much science fiction at all?
I used to when I was younger, but I really don't now.
Same here. I tend to read less of it than I used to when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Star Wars when it came out, and
Oh, yeah.
I stopped. I don't know how many they've had now. I just I've lost interest in that. Not that I couldn't be interested, but there's so much other stuff.
Cool. Yeah, there are so many books. Yeah. So
Oh,
many
there's too
good
many
ones.
books. There's so many books I want to read. And I'm not a fast reader, and I like to write and maybe do something else. So
Really? Yeah,
it,
have a life,
yeah, I like to think I do. So all those things take time, but I always enjoy a good book. So and I've also started reading more memoirs. Uh,
Mm,
a lot of memoirs I find very interesting, and they're usually about people that are known to some extent, and they're usually quite different than what I expected.
mm, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Who in particular has written a memoir that you didn't expect what they wrote?
um, well, one that it comes to mind that I read fairly recently, Quincy Jones.
Huh.
So, I was certainly familiar with Quincy Jones, and I suspected. So I mean, he was 90 in his 90s when he died. Okay, so he was older and a very successful well, he was a musician, but more of a music producer and that sort of thing. Very successful, often thanked at the Grammys effusively. And I wondered how he got his start because he started at a time when Black people didn't have a lot of opportunity. And I thought, I wonder if he was born into a rich Black family, because there were some, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious to see, what his story was. Well, I was completely wrong. He was dirt poor.
Mm-hmm.
He had a very terrible childhood, but he had an amazing personality and persevere. I mean, he was a force of nature.
Wow. Sounds
Very talented,
fascinating.
but he just had a way of doing things. I was very impressed. I wish I had that.
Yeah, it would be nice to have that kind of energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to anyone who's interested in having a writing career?
Well, first of all, don't expect too much. I
Yeah, boy.
think everyone says that, but if that's what you want, I really think, well, one thing I would suggest that I didn't do was start writing short stories. I started with novels and then I started writing some short stories, but I think it would make more sense to start with short stories. One thing I did do before I actually started writing my first novel, which has yet to be published, is I took classes. I went to seminars, I took classes, paid some money, and I think you need that. You need you need to learn. Got books. At
Hmm.
some point, you have to write. I mean, at some point, you have to say, I think I'm
Exactly.
ready.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, you pick up a good book or two, take a class, and from there, really, you just start writing.
yeah. You have to go for it, and then you also have to be very open to criticism
Yes.
because you'll need it.
Hmm.
um, um, yeah, it's kind of upsetting. You spend a lot of time writing something you think is really good, and maybe it isn't.
Hmm.
Um, maybe you know it's a good idea, but it will need some work. Uh, and 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 if you have your mother read it, your spouse read it. I mean, everything I read, I have my husband read it first, but he likes everything I read. If everyone in the world was him, I'd be a great success, but they're not.
Fortunately, my husband told me the first draft that I wrote of something was terrible.
Oh, that's nice. Actually,
That was the best thing he could have done for me. And I said, something, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is terrible. So I went
yeah,
back, I made it better, and he said, much better.
good. That's yeah.
He's an
So,
honest guy.
but my husband will point out certain things, like
Uh-huh.
usually a misspelled word. Well, I don't need that, but yeah. So it just kind of makes me feel better for somebody to read it. And do you understand? I say, do you understand it? I mean, does it sound like gibberish?
Yeah.
You
Especially
know,
when you're talking about science stuff. Yeah.
yeah, of course he knows that, but I still want him to be able to, follow the plot. Does it, sometimes I write
Does it
something,
make sense?
does it make sense? You try
Yes.
to make it move not too slowly, but you don't, you want it to just flow, and you don't want to leave out too many words or too many sentences so people go, wait, what? You
Where
know,
are we? What's going on?
exactly, exactly. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up?
well, I think we've covered a lot about how I write, what I write. I like to write. I mean, my books aren't for everyone, but if you like, medical thrillers, medical or suspense, things like that, um, I think that you could like my books.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you write some really interesting stuff, and I want to thank you for being here today with us.
Okay, well, thanks for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And we can talk after this in a little bonus episode that I put up for Patreon supporters, if that's
Oh, okay.
okay.
That's all. I'll hang on there.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Let's see. So, thanks again, Devin, and best of luck with the latest book. Also, to everyone listening, thank you for your interest. I am so glad for that. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review. It really helps. Furthermore, if you would like to lend a little support toward the production costs of this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. We offer perks to supporters at different levels. So I hope you'll check that out. In the meantime, till next time, our next guest will be J.D. Barker. And with that, I'll just say take care and happy reading. Be seeing you.